Hey everyone! Welcome to Make Your Peace, a 4YE podcast about Wynonna Earp. I'm Catherine Meushaw.
And I'm Lara Hayes.
And today we'll be discussing Season 2, Episode 8, No Future in the Past. And once again, before we get into it, we wanted to say thank you to all of the feedback for the previous episodes, and we really hope you continue to enjoy it. I have a feeling this one's going to be a bit of a beast. This was a busy episode. In this episode, Wynonna kind of astral projects to the past and learns a lot about her past as an Earp, the widows, Doc. We see Robert Spain before he became Bobo Del Rey. We saw what looks to be the end of Juan Carlo. The widows attacked him and Dolls had to shoot him to kind of basically put him out of his misery. Waverly got some answers about her parentage, as well as got kind of in a small fight with Nicole. So, Lara, where do you want to start?
Why don't we start like right off the bat? In the very beginning, they're having that conversation while they're sort of skirting the frozen lake, and Waverly is telling Wynonna just one more example of how absolutely awful Willow was. And she threw her toy out on the lake or whatever. And we get that Angel nickname that we've heard before with Waverly. Wynonna says, Mom used to call you Angel, and we know that Bobo has called her that. So that was strange, and right there at the start, I saw the parallel, and I was wondering, is this is this his child? That's what I wanted to know. And it seems like a lot of people caught up on that. I was in the Wynonna Earp Facebook group this morning, and I saw something kind of interesting. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who went through this. Let me ask you, Catherine, did you watch the episode with closed captioning on or off?
I watched it with closed captioning on, and I also had some headphones in, so I know where you're going with this.
Right. Exactly. So, yes, gentle listeners, I heard it. I heard Waverly call Bobo Papa when he picked her up off the ice and he was the one who saved her. I want to talk more about that later, but that's what I heard. That's what my closed captioning picked up. There's a discrepancy, however, between what I think I saw and heard and what Emily Andrus's Twitter says. And her Twitter says that Waverly said Bobo. She quoted the scene, and she had Waverly saying Bobo. So I don't know where we go with that. I don't know what we take away from it, but I heard Papa and I saw Papa. So
when I first watched, I heard Bobo. Or maybe that was just I heard Bobo when I first watched. And then I saw people talking about is it Papa or is it Bobo? So I rewatched, and I watched on Amazon, and I've noticed that some of those captions aren't always right. So yeah. I was like, oh, well, if people are watching on Amazon or whatever, maybe the caption was just off. But I was listening to it, and it does sound like Papa. But I mean, I don't know how much we need to read into that. And like I said, if Emily, I don't remember seeing Emily's tweet. Fridays are always such a blur. But if she said that it was Bobo, then I'm inclined to trust the person who runs, the showrunner and the person who wrote the episode. And I also think she was a very small child who fell in some very, 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 very cold water. And we don't know how long she was under there before Bobo pulled her out. So if she said Papa, maybe she thought Ward pulled her out at first. And as far as she knew, Bobo was her imaginary friend. So it didn't really make sense to me also, that she would think that Bobo pulled her out, which is why I'm thinking, she told Wynonna, oh, you pulled me out. And some people were like, well, was she, lying to her and stuff? And, maybe it wasn't necessarily, maybe as a child, because it was her imaginary friend Bobo, she didn't know he was real. So she kind of just thought it was Ward. And now that she knows that Bobo is real, she didn't necessarily want to tell Wynonna that it was Bobo, because it was she already had that weird relationship with Bobo to begin with how things ended up with him. Maybe she didn't want to tell her that it was Bobo.
Okay.
So I have a lot of thoughts about Waverly's parentage and just Bobo in general. So I apologize in advance.
No, that's cool. And actually, you kind of led me right to a point that I didn't think I was going to make so early in the episode, but I think that there's a lot here that we can talk about. So, yeah, this episode was really heavy on agency and the illusion of free will, as Wynonna said to Juan Carlo outside the church. A question that kept coming up for me was, how aware is everyone of what they are doing? Was Nicole aware that she was taking Waverly's choice to know the truth away from her? How could she not be when she was actively misleading her during their pool game? Was Waverly aware that Bobo was the one who saved her from the ice before she read those test results? Did that memory take a while to surface, or did Wynonna rewrite Waverly's history by giving Bobo Waverly's name? And because of that, was Bobo out on the ice to save Waverly? Was Wynonna aware that she was naming Bobo when she told him, you'll be Bobo when you resurrect as a demon? Was Wynonna disoriented when she was in Bobo's arms? Was she asking for Waverly, or was she intentionally misleading Bobo about her name so that he would watch over and protect her sister? I want to know who knew what and when they knew it, because paradoxes drive me insane, Catherine. I don't know if Wynonna was determining part of her future and Waverly's future on this, walk through the past, or if, like I said, if it was just a buried childhood memory that it took time for or a trigger even for Waverly to remember it correctly. I don't even know what I want you to say to this, but just say something.
Okay, I got you, because time paradoxes may drive you bananas, but I find them really fun if they're done right. So so thank you so much, because I can now go on a time paradox rant.
Do it.
Now, anybody who's seen any kind of sci-fi show know there's multiple theories of thoughts as far as how time is. And I think in this case, we're seeing something like, maybe it's a lot of both things that you were talking about. Like, I believe Wynonna gave Bobo Waverly's name because she understood that that Waverly needed the protection, or because she already knew that Bobo looked over her, so that she knew she had to give him Waverly's name.
Right.
So it's kind of like she already knew that Bobo was very protective of Waverly, so she felt she had to, and she's also very protective of Waverly. She knows she can take care of herself, but she's always going to take care of Waverly, so I think that's where that came in. And I think, in a way, Wynonna did pull Waverly out of that ice. Because, okay, let's say that originally Wynonna did pull her out. And then when she went back and was Bobo's guardian angel and planted this seed to protect Waverly. So in a way, Wynonna kind of did pull Waverly out of the ice because she told Bobo to look out for her. So I think there's a lot of, the answers, it's really complicated, because I think in some cases Wynonna did change history, and in some cases she didn't necessarily, because she remembers how things went. So she kind of had to give him a nudge in the right direction. She named Bobo, but it's kind of one of those, she knew his name was going to be Bobo, and she ended up accidentally giving it to him, kind of things. But I think the pulling out of the ice is, we don't know. We don't know what could have prompted a false memory or what couldn't have, because this was originally just supposed to be, some sort of... Wynonna, I don't think, was meant to interfere. I don't think Bobo or anybody was supposed to see Wynonna. So it's kind of, it's a lot of stuff in the air. If any of that made sense, and if any of that kind of answers some of was what you were hoping, I would say, or what you were what you can jump off of, because I think it's time paradoxes and stuff like that are really strange and they're interesting. Yeah. I think it's a lot of both things, or it's really complicated, because Wynonna's presence also could have changed nothing, because if you think about it, maybe things were always destined to go this way. So Wynonna, basically would have always gone back.
Wait.
In every cycle of time, that's part of it. Wynonna always goes back. This is what's destined to happen. So no matter what, Robert, I need to be better. Like, I'm gonna try to refer to pre-demon Bobo as Robert. Robert would have always left Doc in the well. Robert would have always told Wyatt to shoot him. Robert would have always had somebody telling him, like, Wynonna would have always been there to say, hey, this is. So maybe history didn't change because you've got this cycle where Wynonna always goes back at this point or to these points in time, and Robert always sees her, and it leads to this. So there's that realm of it too.
But it also, that I like because it addresses exactly what I said in the beginning. It's the Wynonna quote. It's the illusion of free will.
And piggybacking on that, Juan Carlo says something very interesting to Wynonna. We have a lot of conversations about choice and agency, like you're saying. And did you catch what he said to her? He said Wynonna is all choices, which I find to be incredibly interesting because Wynonna doesn't feel like she's had any choice.
Right.
So for Juan Carlo to be the person saying, you're all choices, is very interesting to me because it's just, she had no choice in being the heir. She had no choice, but, so that's how she sees it. She sees it as not having a lot of choice in these matters. So I find it interesting that he told her she's all choices, and that's why she had to be the one to go on this journey.
You also have to look at choice as having consequence, as choice as action. So it makes sense also for Juan Carlo to tell her you're all choices because he cannot interfere or intervene. So I think the speaking party also matters quite a lot when we're talking about that moment. Mm-hmm. If you're comparing Juan Carlo to Wynonna, she is all choices and he has none because he cannot affect change.
Yeah, he cannot interfere and only chose to when he knew he was dying.
Right.
When he could not be around for the consequences. I think this is a good spot to... sorry, I was trying to run through it and remember because you hit me with a whole bunch of...
I did, I'm sorry.
Who knew what. No, it's okay. Nicole, though. I have a lot of feelings about Nicole. Big surprise. Because I think she knew what she was doing. I think she knew that it was wrong, and I think she wanted to protect Waverly. I truly think she wanted to protect Waverly, like she said. And I think what she was trying to do was make sure Waverly was ready, or she was scared about how Waverly would react, and it would affect them, which is may or may not be like selfish on Nicole's part, whatever, however you want to. I mean, it was it wasn't a great thing to do, and I think it's hard because I saw a lot of people very upset. It's hard because of who Nicole is. We know she wouldn't ever maliciously hurt Waverly, like maliciously do anything to her, and I think it's just, but I think she knew. I think she knew, she lied when she said this wasn't, and she knew that would hurt her, and she knew, I think she was fully aware. I don't think there was any matter of, and I honestly think she knew she was taking Waverly's choice away for that moment, but I don't think she necessarily intended to keep it from her completely.
I don't think she was going to sit on that forever. I don't. But let's back it up to what you said just a second ago, because I think this is important. I'm not going to defend what Nicole did because she was wrong, and I do believe Nicole knew she was wrong because she kept herself seated at that bar. She did not go after Waverly, and I think that's as much an admission of guilt as you really need. She understood Waverly had to get up and go. She knew she was in the wrong. And I think she knew the entire time that she was concealing important information from her and that she was at least limiting her choice at the moment. But I think what we need to keep in mind here is that Nicole just got Waverly back. I'm not defending her actions. I'm not saying that you should do that to someone you love. You shouldn't, she's not a child and you shouldn't rob her of her choices or her agency. I'm going to say that a lot. But you shouldn't do those things. However, get into Nicole's head for a little bit here. I can see why she may have been motivated to do something like that. I think she just wanted a minute. You know what I mean? just like 1 minute where they were okay and the world wasn't ending and everything wasn't terrible and they could just get through this baby crisis and just be happy for 1 second. I think that's where this was coming from. I think they've been through so much, and I think she just needed a little time. Unfortunately, it wasn't about her, and it wasn't about them, but she made it about her and about them, and now they're going to have to deal with this.
Definitely. And back to, like, staying at the bar, I mean, that's the one thing is, while she did take away Waverly's choice in this, in some regard, in her agency, she still is respectful of when Waverly kind of says no, basically. You know, because she, you know, Waverly said, don't follow me. And Nicole sat. You know she wanted to. But Nicole is also pretty, I think she's fairly introspective. I think she's fairly aware. And she, like, she knew she, like you said, she knew she did something terrible. Like, she knew she did a bad thing. And despite the fact that she wanted to follow Waverly, despite the fact that she wanted Waverly to stay, she knew she had to, like, she was going to sit there because Waverly said, do not follow me.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll be fine. They'll work it out. They'll be fine.
I think they'll work it out, but I think that agency is very important to Emily Andress because this keeps coming up. So I think that we can expect this to be a real fight between the two of them. I think that we can expect this to be a real problem because I think it would be a very real problem for Emily. So shippers, just hold on to your hearts, hunker down, pray for daylight. We'll get through it together.
Yeah, that's a nice time for a casual reminder. Real relationships have fights. This was never going to be everything is 100% happy all the time. So please remember that, guys. Like, this real relationships, people fight. This was meant to be, like, they're trying to portray a real relationship. Unfortunately, if you're in a relationship where you guys don't fight all the time, ever, or not all the time, sorry. If you're in a relationship where you fight all the time, there's a problem. If you're in a relationship where you don't fight any of the time, there's something underlying there. So it's like, that's the thing to remember, like, it's okay. They're in a fight. They're going to deal with it one way or another. I am also looking forward to Wynonna's reaction to this fight because I think she'll find out somehow. And I'm kind of hoping for like a minor threatening of Nicole just because I really enjoy those. Like, I enjoy the overprotective sibling or whatever.
I think you might be wrong about that. I think Wynonna is, by her own admission, a screw-up. And I think that we could see a very unlikely advocate in Wynonna who's like, cut the girl a break. She made a mistake. She loves you. She didn't want to hurt you. Like, I don't know about that. I think that what Nicole did might actually speak to the overprotective big sister in Wynonna. So I really think that this could go either way, but that's interesting. I like that you said that. Let's see. I'm excited to see what happens.
Yes, let's see who's right. Is it she sides with Nicole, like not sides, but she, tries to see her side and try to support, or she comes out and is like, hey, because Wynonna she may be a screw up and she may be able to understand screwing up the people that you love. However, she is fiercely protective of Waverly.
I agree. I also think Waverly has never been so happy. So I don't know. I'm good luck to both of us. And I think no matter what, it's going to be a great moment, however this goes down. And I'm just excited for it. But I love that we took different sides on this because I think it is kind of a polarizing topic. And I think either way, we'll get a lot out of it. So that's fun.
Yeah, is this our first, like, big disagreement where we're like, no, this is how it's going to be this way?
Maybe.
Instead of... Yes!
But disagreement in that there's no animosity, and I don't, like, if you're right, then I'm just going to internet high five you. But yeah, this might be our first, our first little dispute.
Yeah, I mean, guys, we're not actually fighting. You'll know when we fight. But no, yeah, that's definitely, that's a way hot mess right there. Well, we've touched on a couple of topics that I know we both have a lot more notes on.
Yeah.
So I have, like I said, where do you want to go next?
Well, But before we move, because I think there's a lot to say. I think there's a lot more to say about Waverly and Bobo, especially with Bobo coming back. But
yes.
I wanna touch on Bobo and Wynonna for a second, and then we can see where that leads us. They seem to be connected in a pretty profound way. We focus on Waverly because that's the relationship we know. We know that Bobo was her imaginary friend. I'm again air quotes. You can't see me. He's told her, but when Bobo recognizes Wynonna in the church, he doesn't say, "Oh, it's you from the bar." He says, "I've seen glimpses of you my whole life, my whole life."
Yeah.
And it's her. It's not Waverly. It's Wynonna. He calls her his guardian angel, says that she's there to save him. And, we know, or at least everybody watching believes, right, that she is the Earp who's going to break the curse someday. And I think Bobo's recognition of Wynonna and Bobo's resurrection at the end indicate that there is a crucial role, that he has a crucial role to play in ending the curse and saving his own soul. He was a good man once. We got to see that, before hell. He's not just a revenant. He's a revenant who was cursed through self-sacrifice. He told Wyatt to take his shot. He's a revenant who loved Wyatt, and maybe this connection is the reason Bobo could see Wynonna's astral body. Maybe it was this weird tether between them more than the fact that Bobo already had one foot in the grave, because he said, "Oh, I can see you because I'm dying." But Doc, makes it a point earlier in the episode of saying that he's been dying of TB since he was 14, and he didn't see, Wynonna or anything like that. So I think that Bobo's destiny is deeply tied to Wynonna's, and I think that he is back. I think this goes for really any resurrection on a show. He is back because his story is not over. There's still more that he needs to do.
Definitely. And I'm glad you kind of said that, because I literally have a note here that I typed up, I think, while I was watching the episode or directly after that, like on Friday night, that says, "Is Bobo the only one back because of the connection he has with Wynonna?" So we're very much on the same page. And I think it is, because I was struck by him saying "my whole life" as well, because we only saw Wynonna there from the moment he got shot to the moment, we assume he died. So there's definitely a lot of questions just with that, with what was he seeing, or how was he seeing her his whole life? But I think you're onto something there with that. He's a key to ending the curse because of his relationship or connection to Wynonna. And I'm curious also. So he saw her when he was dying, but he didn't recognize her when
know her name or anything.
They first met. Say what?
I said, yeah, he didn't know her name or anything, so.
But it kind of also goes back to, we don't know how many times Bobo has been resurrected. And we know every time they're resurrected, they lose a little bit of them, they become more demon-y. Every time they're sent back to hell, they come back and end up a little bit more demon-y. So maybe it's just him, he's lost a lot of what he hasn't held on to. So he remembered, I have to watch out for Waverly. But he didn't necessarily remember what she looked like.
And that parallels exactly what Waverly went through at the end of the episode, which again, I still have a big question of, was that the history of Waverly being saved before Wynonna went back in time? That's still a big, circle that we'll never really unravel, but
maybe not, who knows?
Maybe not. But it does go right back to that, doesn't it? She's got this incomplete memory, and so does Bobo. He doesn't remember Wynonna's face. When they first meet in Purgatory, in season 1, he does not recognize Wynonna as his angel or as anything to him other than Wynonna, or other than Wyatt Earp's descendant. But he does hold on to Waverly. He holds on to that name. That's the fraction of the memory he retains.
Definitely. And I have a lot of just Bobo thoughts, and now we're talking about it, I love that we got this background on Bobo / Robert that we have a very sympathetic character now. Strictly good or strictly bad characters sometimes get really boring.
Truth.
So, I mean, they could still be good characters, it's just when you don't have a lot of other substance. So, and this has come up a few times, and we've seen it before, that there are shades of gray. There are revenants who can still kind of be good, like we saw that with Fish and Levi. You know, Fish, we don't know what happened with him, but he wasn't an awful guy. So I have weird theories about that too, but I'm not going to say that. I'll say that for another day. So Robert's really, really interesting to me, and Bobo is just like a bajillion times more interesting and way more sympathetic. And I really love that we got that backstory. Because it does lead to a lot of questions and a lot of, like, because he says something. Doesn't Bobo in the finale, the season 1 finale, say something to Waverly about not being like the other Revenants?
Maybe.
Or something, I think. Or not, maybe it wasn't the finale, but maybe, I feel like in season 1 at some point he says something like that. And I want to say it's to Waverly, but I'm apparently am due for a rewatch. Someone please correct me.
Yeah.
And so it comes down to, like, how much he retains. So he still kind of retains some of that. He knows he's not like the other Revenants. And I think there's a lot of internalized stuff for him, too, you know, because he was a good man, for the most part, who was punished for it. And he was punished, basically, for his love for Wyatt, almost, because, and his trust in Wyatt, because, you know, he, without a doubt, when he was being used as a human shield, said, shoot me, not realizing, because he was so focused on Wyatt needs to take this guy out, I'm in the way, he needs to do what he can. You know, he didn't hear Clutie casting that curse. So I think there's a lot there with him. Like, he was, so I just, he's becoming a very interesting character. But I think, like, his anger at being a good man who was punished sets him apart, and I think I want to know how he ended up becoming their leader, because, like, the leader of the Revenants, because they know who he was. They know who Robert Spain was. So when he ends up in hell with them, what did they think? What did he tell them?
Well,
how did he end up leading them? But on the other side of that, he also had a pretty, they weren't really keen on Clutie. So it's possible that just him knowing that he has something on her could have done that as well. Because he's just a lot. I have thoughts.
okay, so wait, so let me deal with what you just said for a second. So, as far as, like, Bobo becoming the leader of the other Revenants and that whole situation, we could look at it in terms of who has been wronged the most by Wyatt Earp, right? And I think unarguably his descendants. But aside from that, Bobo would be the most betrayed. Everybody else was an outlaw. They made their bed and they slept in it. You know, they were going to get put down by Wyatt Earp eventually, and sure, this is a really stiff punishment, always going to hell and getting reborn and all that stuff. But out of all of those Revenants, the person who deserved it the least, at least when it happened, was Bobo. He would be the person with the biggest axe to grind against Wyatt, because he was the biggest victim of circumstance. And I love that, because this show also deals a whole heck of a lot with victim of circumstance. Back to you, Catherine.
I mean, well, yeah, it does give Wynonna and Bobo a lot more in common. Because you're right, they're both victims of circumstance. And I don't know, it's just, he's, like I said, he's become significantly more interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how he comes back, because, like I said, we don't know how many times he's been resurrected. So we don't know how much of himself he's already lost. We get kind of an idea. We don't know how much of it he's even, like, a lot of this could be an act where he's, like, overcompensating, because we do see him get emotional a few times, like, in like, the finale and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's...
Willa shows us a totally different side of him. I mean, at first, just the name, just by calling him Robert, and then yes. Skeevy or not, he did love her. So yeah, absolutely. We saw a little bit of a different side with him through Willa, and this was just, a whole nother level. But I think that I think it's safe to expect that he will come back ready to stir up as much trouble as quickly as possible. And I suppose what I think will happen if we're going to get a redemption arc for Robert, if we're going to get Robert back and leave Bobo behind, I think the secret to that will be Wynonna. I think Wynonna will remind him of who she is now that she really knows who he was.
Yeah. And sorry, I totally had a thought while you were talking. Bobo's telekinesis. We've seen that revenants, when they die, like Killer Miller, when he was human, was like, he killed people. But he did it in the shadows. Like he very often wasn't seen. So he became a quote unquote shadow assassin. And we have Bobo, who seems to be the only revenant with any kind of magic. And he's got this telekinesis. Robert was the only person who saw Wynonna, this little astral Wynonna, and had thought that she was with him his whole life, basically. And I'm wondering if maybe Robert had some sort of, he was extra attuned to
like supernatural,
like,
or spiritual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, I don't really necessarily want to say psychically, but like you kind of, you know what I'm on about, right?
Yeah, maybe.
So I'm wondering if like that's how that manifested. It manifested in having actual like his telekinesis for some reason. Him being like, or maybe that was Constance helped him out by giving him that gift for whatever reason.
Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah, but I think you're right about that, because we later see that Juan Carlo has the same power because he rips that gun out of Dawes' hand. So maybe this is more something to do with Clutie's power and with the curse that they inherited by burying those seals. Maybe it's more tied to that. Maybe it's more tied to Constance Clutie. Not that I think you're wrong, because he did, say that he saw glimpses of Wynonna his whole life. So he could have had a sort of psychic predisposition or something, like, if you will. But the telekinesis that we see, we later also see Juan Carlo. The thing that we share is that curse, or is the seal that they concealed.
Okay, but Doc got dragged into that too. So it's interesting, Juan Carlo got dragged into it and was burdened with the immortality that Doc was, in addition to a whole slew of other things. And Constance obviously has powers. So it kind of leaves you with like, okay, so Robert gets his telekinesis from Clutie, and he doesn't need the immortality because he's a demon, or he will be. So if it's connected to the seal, where does that leave Doc? Because Constance dragged Doc into this too. She cursed him with the longevity or immortality or whatever you want to call it. So what about, like, would Doc's possession of that ring ever do anything more than just give him longevity, if it's related to the seal?
Yes, I see where you're going with this. The only explanation that I can offer as to why Doc wouldn't be affected is because Doc does not know that the ring on his finger is the seal, so he is not involved in
the original incantation.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
No, I know. I just like throwing things out.
Yeah.
This has sparked a lot of fun and interesting thoughts. It was a very busy episode and gave a lot of mythology, I think, that was very much needed and appreciated. Because, Doc Doc just knows that ring gives him his immortality, which goes back to what we were talking about last week with why he was so fixated on that ring and how he's got to go to the salt flats. So he knows he's getting sick again.
Yeah, he does.
I mean, and he had it there. I like how that's how they made him disappear for the episode, since they needed him, in the past. So it's like, just go to the salt flats. We'll see you later.
I wish that we had gotten a little bit, I feel like we spent a lot of time on Bobo this episode, and I'm glad, but I still had a lot of questions about Juan Carlo, and he's dead now. So I'm a little bit frustrated by that. Hopefully we get another flashback episode that, gives us these answers. But going back to the point that you made earlier, he inherited this longevity. The backside of that curse is that, he is only an observer, and good for you, because you called it. He's like a watcher, observer type character. You totally nailed that one. But what I don't get is his role as the observer, is this his punishment for siding with Clutie to bury the sheriff and to curse the seals? Like, did the sheriff curse him when he cursed Wyatt? I don't understand how Juan Carlo is cursed, or who put the curse on him, if it's just a result of his involvement with Constance. And also another thing that really stuck out to me was, and you and I have talked about this before, the whole JC abbreviation. There was a lot of biblical text in this episode, and there were scenes like when Wynonna walks into the church and there's the statue of Christ standing there, and then later, she says, "Thanks for nothing, JC." Oh, not you, the other one. But you and I have speculated before, like, is he some kind of Christ figure? How do you feel about that after this episode?
I don't know. I mean, he's obviously got a connection to the church because he was a priest. Like, that was his role in purgatory. And it sounded like he wasn't a great one because they make comments about him being a drunk.
True, yeah.
So maybe that ties into it too. Like, maybe it's not necessarily that he's like a Jesus figure or whatever, but it's just that connection to the I don't know.
No. You're totally right.
Because there is the parallel there, and like I said, I mean, maybe the fact that I'm not always great talking about religion, not because I'm uncomfortable. It's because I don't always it's not a knowledgeable thing for me. So bear with me. Because talking about why was he cursed, it could very well be siding with Clutie, or siding with somebody that was a very, maybe an unchristian thing to do, and somehow it resulted in this very mystical town. We know purgatory is a mystical place, and we don't know who some people answer to, like the Order.
Right.
Because they don't really answer to Juan Carlo, he just kind of is a guide. So maybe there's another entity that we haven't met yet that said, okay, well, you were a terrible priest, you're kind of a drunk, and you conspired against the sheriff of this town who was a demon, but you had to team up with one of his wives, a witch, to do it. So maybe there's something to explore in that aspect, where it's still looking at it from a religious point, but maybe not necessarily looking at him as a Christ figure. But I said, it's not my realm. So that's just me kind of throwing stuff out as you talk.
And I like a point that you made a second ago too, that you moved past pretty quickly, but it sort of answered my question. And as soon as you said it, I was like, duh, Laura. Maybe all of this Christ figure comparison was really just an Easter egg to be like, hey, he was a priest. End of story.
Could it have been that simple?
It could have been. I don't know that it was, but it totally could have. All of that imagery could have been leading us to that conclusion, and then we finally got confirmation because we actually saw him in his robes, and we know that he was a priest. So it could have just been that, yeah. But I don't know that I'm totally sold on it, but it'll do for now.
As long as it does for now, that's the important thing. Yeah, no, I'm kind of with you on that one. This has been a season of characters being taken out too soon, almost. We've lost Mercedes. We assume that she's gone for good for right now because we don't know how they're going to get her back, if they do. I mean, she still might be alive, but she doesn't have a face. So who knows how that's going. I mean, we've lost Lucado. We've lost Clutie. I gotta keep calling her, I keep confusing myself now because, in this episode, we had Sheriff Clutie, and now I'm every time I say Clutie, I know I mean Constance, but, we've lost Constance, and, so this has been kind of, you're right, I want to know more about Juan Carlo. I haven't learned enough, and maybe it's just, we get kind of really pulled into these characters, and we just want to know everything about everybody. So, I don't know. I don't know if we'll get our answers.
I don't
I
either.
hope we do. Hey, season 3.
Season 3. We would
Maybe
want
season
Carla
3.
backstory, please.
Yes. Hi, yes. Who do I talk to? No. Just frantically start tweeting at Emily.
That might do it, though, is the thing.
Yes. Frantically tweeting. So, yeah, I'm definitely, he's intriguing. Let's see. I know we've glossed over some big things. What other things, like, overall, did you want to hit? And then where did you kind of want to deep dive next?
Okay, so I have an overall thought that was just sort of appreciative that we sort of tying up loose ends from like past theories that I got confirmed this episode that I was pretty excited about. And there's one more sort of theory, I suppose, more of like a speculation that I want to dive into surrounding the biblical quotes.
Okay. All right. Oh, can we pat ourselves on the back though for just our last podcast and this one, like looking at like our last podcast and how we talked about last episode and then how many answers we got that we were like talking about and how many things like you were really on point with like the talisman thing and the seal thing. And can we just pat ourselves on the back for like how great we are?
You know what? This is our podcast, and I think we can do that because I was tickled to no end that we got the story behind Doc's ring, that it was Clutie's wedding ring to this sheriff that we haven't met yet, that we got confirmation that the sister wives were in fact her sister wives, the widows. We got confirmation. Yeah, we got confirmation that the ring was a talisman that was keeping Doc alive and healthy. We can now safely say, which is exactly what we talked about in the last episode, we can now say that the evil purgatory sheriff Clutie, I think, is Constance's husband and the one Wyatt killed, and that is the being that these 3 seals will release. So hooray for big bads. This episode really tied in nicely with the wild speculation that was rampant through our last recording.
Yes, I mean, and a lot of it was your theories. Like, we're doing pretty good.
I think so.
Sorry, I had to, I had to say it because I was watching the whole episode. I was just like, oh my gosh, look at us. Look at how good we're doing. We also have managed to go we're like 50 minutes into this thing and haven't mentioned a Buffy reference. So, but like I said, I don't want to throw you off too much because I have thoughts about that. So what was your last overall?
So my last big thing, and then move on to Buffy and, quotes and favorite moments and all the fun stuff. But my last big thing is Clutie says, I am made whole in the house of my enemies, which is a line that Dawes later corrects to the actual biblical quote, which I was telling you, I think it's the book of Matthew. My enemies are made whole in my house. It's a really dark Bible passage. It's got a lot to do with like the more fire and retribution type God. But in any event, the reason that I want to hone in on that line, my enemies are made whole in my house, is in that scene, Doc is telling Wynonna that in the end, he's using that to illustrate in the end we all become enemies. That's kind of how he's going with it. But that's not what I was focusing on, Catherine, because a moment later we see Bobo's resurrection. And Bobo, possibly fathering Waverly, would put him firmly in Wynonna's house if it would make them family. So in that context, we can almost interpret that line to mean like the enemies are coming from inside the house. And I just loved it because I thought it's a really menacing Bible passage anyway. But it's so malleable, the context and the line itself, that, I really think Dawes gives us one way to look at it. Constance gives us another way to view it. And, we kind of have to fall somewhere in the in-between. Are our enemies made stronger because of us? Are the people that we surround ourselves with destined to become our enemies? Or are our enemies destined to become a part of our house? There's so many possibilities. I I don't have a firm theory for what that means. All I can offer you is more speculation. But I thought that was really interesting because it was backed up right against Bobo resurrecting.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, and like I mentioned before, religion is not my wheelhouse. So, like, thank you for the in-depth analysis of the Bible quote, because I kind of read that and went, like, I didn't really go too far into it when I was listening to the episode and stuff.
Full disclaimer, you guys can correct my, well, don't. You don't need to correct my Bible because I don't care that much. But full disclaimer, I haven't read the book of Matthew in a really long time, so I could be way off. But yeah, that was just, disregarding the biblical context, just breaking that line down to apply it to different people. It was wonderful how easy that was to do. It's a highly subjective line.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, once again, interested to see where Bobo fits in, because I really I appreciate that analysis of that quote, just because it wasn't on my list to go over. Because I think you're right. There's a lot of different ways to take that. It was also interesting that Dawes was the one who pointed out, who was eventually we all become enemies, or if we live long enough, we all become enemies. And I thought that was definitely interesting based on who said what. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
And I won't hold it against you if you were terribly wrong, but I don't know who else might. So don't crucify Lara, you guys. Oh, that was a terrible, I didn't.
Yeah, that was, I think I'm leaving it in, too. I think I am. So, what else did you have? Did you have anything else, big before we, sort of move on to Buffy and fun things?
Oh, girl, I have a big theory thing. Because we haven't touched a lot on Waverly's parentage, and that is my longest section in my notes.
All right. Am I going to be mad at you?
So, maybe.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right, so this is a lot of thoughts about Waverly's parentage. Because, okay, so she has this DNA test. We don't know what the DNA test says. We don't know whose DNA she tested it against. Because you can't just submit a DNA test to somewhere and go and get a result that says, oh, this person isn't your parent. She had to have tested against somebody. It seems weird that they would have had Ward's DNA on file. Even if he was a police officer, it still feels from, how technological, I don't think Purgatory is up on the technology or even the procedure that would cause them to keep Ward's DNA on file, right?
Sure, yeah.
And I think you also have to consider the timeline. So Waverly probably tested against Wynonna, if she tested against anybody, which again she would have had to confirm that she's not an Earp.
I agree.
Testing against Wynonna would not show her she was not an Earp. Testing it against Wynonna would just show her if they have one parent or two parents in common.
Yes.
And even that, DNA is tricky because you get half of your DNA, from each parent. So DNA testing is weird. I mean, you can still kind of, if you and your sibling, or me and, my full siblings, we would be able to point out, oh, hey, we have enough in common where we probably share both parents. We would be able to do that. And I think that's what was done. I think Waverly tested against Wynonna because I don't see how she would have done it any other way. Everybody is assuming that whatever that DNA test is means that she's not an Earp. And we've talked about this before. And even, I'm curious about this DNA test because Bobo could be a ginormous red herring. They're kind of pushing us in that direction, and they're really pushing us in that direction, which could mean it's something completely different, especially if you want to present something that shocks people. And I think with all of the foreshadowing that it's Bobo, it might not necessarily be Bobo, you know?
Yeah.
So there's that. But the DNA testing, I have questions. There's also both Wynonna and Willa, both Wynonna has said it and Willa has, wrote it in her diary. They remember their parents bringing Waverly home from the hospital.
Right.
They don't seem to remember their mother being pregnant. And they are 6 and 7 years older than Waverly. You're not going to sit there and tell me that a 6 and 7 year old would not have noticed their mother was pregnant. They would have noticed mommy getting fat, and while they wouldn't necessarily have known it then, their adult selves would have. But I find it interesting that the emphasis is being put on they remember you coming home from the hospital, not they remember your mom being pregnant with you.
Right.
So there's that thought. Like I said, I have a lot. I had a very lengthy conversation with a friend. So, just a couple of things. So we know a human and a revenant have had a child. According to Jonas, it's happened before. We're led to assume that child is Waverly. We're assuming that the revenant in question is the father, right?
Right.
Wyatt Earp killed 77 people. A couple of them who were killed could have been women.
Yeah.
So here's where I'm at as far as theories as to Waverly's parentage. Got a couple of scenarios. Knowing all of that, right? First one, actually, no, I'm not going to say that one. I'm not going to say that first. The one that they seem to be rolling with is that their mom, who, do we have a first name for her? We don't, do we?
I don't think so. I've just been calling her Mama Earp in all my notes.
Yeah, I didn't, I need a name because Mama Earp is not going to work for all of this if some of this happens. Okay, so here are some scenarios. So the one that everybody seems to be kind of rolling with is that Mama Earp got down and dirty with a revenant and somehow convinced Ward to keep the baby, which would explain why Ward was really cold with the baby. Like, why he doesn't really seem to be, why he never really warmed to Waverly.
And on the opposite end, why the mother did.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I got you.
So that's the one that seems to be the one that everybody's going with and seems to be the direction we're being pointed to. There's the theory that neither of them are the parents and that for some reason Mama Earp, I'm going with if that is the mother because of how she spoke about Waverly, calling her angel and making sure that she knew she was loved. And Ward kind of was like, nope. So she convinced, for some reason they have this baby that needs a home, and she convinced him to keep the baby. They're like, hey, let's take this baby. And to go along with that, maybe Juan Carlo intervened and convinced them to take Waverly in for some reason. Because Juan Carlo knows stuff. So maybe he knew she would be important and knew she needed to be taken care of by the Earps for whatever reason. And then there's the other option. Waverly's mother was a revenant who was fathered by Ward, and he somehow managed to convince his wife to take in this baby or whatever. But Ward is so cold to his child because he thought a half-revenant child meant that he or Willa would have to kill Waverly. And he didn't know what that meant for the curse. So maybe that could be a reason too.
I like that reason as being the reason that Ward never warmed up to her if ultimately he or his eldest daughter would have to be the one to eventually put her in the ground. It's heartbreaking, but I do like that theory. I don't think that anybody has enough information yet to really decide, because I think you're right. There's a large push towards Bobo, which could very well be a red herring. It would certainly be in keeping with the show to pull a bait and switch like that. But I'm coming down more in the camp that Juan Carlo, the possibility that neither Earp parent is her biological ancestor, and she's just a child that they adopted from somewhere who has a revenant parent. I come down more on that. I don't believe that she's an Earp by blood, not a half sibling, not a whole sibling.
Okay. So that was actually the thinking that Ward would have to kill his child. That was the thing that I thought might punch you in the heart. That was the thing actually. That I thought might blindside you.
You couldn't see my face, but I grimaced when you said it, but I was nodding because I was like, that makes sense. So I kind of got myself through it because I was like, that's a really good theory.
I was hoping to get a good reaction like I did last time I blindsided you.
Wait. Give me a second.
Do better next time. No,
wait, we can do this. No, hold on 1 second. Catherine, how dare you?
But no, because this was a very lengthy conversation, like I said, I had yesterday. And because it's just, there's a lot about this DNA test that, we don't know yet. And I think the idea of Juan Carlo intervening is intriguing because it would once again, if he convinced them to take Waverly in, that would once again, maybe their mom was really intent on making sure that she was made to feel special for whatever reason, maybe because she trusted Juan Carlo, and for some reason, and Juan Carlo was like, this baby's special, so she's like, okay, I'm going to make sure she knows that. Or there's also, I don't remember what we know about their mother, other than the fact that she ran off. And friend suggested that she, like, if she suffered from some kind of mental illness, that maybe when Juan Carlo told her, like, Waverly was an angel, she took it really literally, which I thought was an interesting take on that as well. And maybe she didn't run off. Maybe she was institutionalized. She wouldn't have been the first one to have that happen. So thanks, Dev, for that theory and for that wonderful train of thought. Because I hadn't considered that. I said it before. If we don't see their mother by season's end, I will be surprised, and we will definitely see her in season 3.
Agree.
Like, we have to.
Yeah.
There was also, there was another theory too. Kind of went along with maybe they share a mother, but it's both, they have the same mother, but it wasn't really like she went and cheated on Ward. Maybe it wasn't like a willing pregnancy or anything. So something terrible happened, and, Waverly is a reminder to Ward that he couldn't protect his wife, and that it's almost his fault because he's the heir. The Revenants, it's his fault that Revenants are in purgatory. So that was another option as far as theories about Waverly's parentage. So apologies, because that went on for a very long time.
Nicely done, though. Yeah, you had a lot there. Like I said, I kind of come down in the camp that she is not an Earp at all. But I don't have a lot of concrete anything to back that up. That's the feeling that I get.
Nope.
And that's what I'm going with for now. But I think we're going to get a lot more answers in the next episode. So I'm gonna wait, and I'm really just gonna kind of see how that plays out, because I don't think I can make a prediction either way there. Not with anything approaching certainty.
Right, and I think the bottom line is we both seem to be landing on what we're being led to is a little bit too obvious for it to be the case in this in this circumstance. I think that's kind of where we're both landing as far as where Waverly's parentage is, that Bobo is the safest theory, but not necessarily where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Which, if we're wrong, then, if we're wrong, we're wrong, but I'd be kind of interested to see it go somewhere different, even though with as sympathetic as they have just made Bobo, it could be interesting. But, they don't need him to be Waverly's father to make him sympathetic, and I think the fact that he promised his guardian angel that he knew was named Waverly was kind of enough for him to be that protective and everything, and I don't think it necessarily indicates anything past that he knew he needed to protect it, like he knew he needed to watch over his guardian angel, quote unquote guardian angel. So we may have gotten clues that he's not his parent, like her father, in the same episode, but that seems to be steering us that direction. All right, what about some other favorite moments and stuff from the episode? Because I had a few tiny ones, but what other favorite little moments and stuff did you have?
I liked that we saw a more capable Sheriff Nedley. I thought that was really funny. Like, he was napping in his office.
Yes.
Of course he was. But he was so quick to solve the mystery of the Dodge truck. Like, you could imagine what he was like when he was a younger man, like before the strangeness of this town numbed him, when he was less exhausted and more pragmatic, more like Nicole, which I think is probably why he likes her so much. So that was really cool. I really liked how the rapid fire answers we got from those random people passing Wynonna on the street in the
the random exposition.
Yes, I loved that now. I loved it because they said, well, those demon ladies are the Padres' problem now. If you don't drink himself to death, they'll probably eat him alive. And it's funny because it happened. They ate him alive, literally. So I thought I got a really big chuckle out of that. Rosita with her baby pinata filled with donuts was pretty funny. And
oh my gosh, yes.
I think Doll's crying over Wynonna's dead body, begging her to live. I think that's the most undone we've ever seen that man, and it humanized him. He knew exactly how long Wynonna was out for, 77 seconds. I had no doubt that they were the longest of his life. So I appreciated that. And I'm reading, like, I've read like mixed things on the OBGYN. So I'm hoping that you can talk a little bit more about that. I was not upset with her or offended that she seemed to sort of be guiding Wynonna towards adoption. I don't know how you do that in a nicer way. And like Wynonna, I can see why she would think that that's a solution for Wynonna, because Wynonna doesn't want to see the ultrasound and she doesn't want to know the sex of the baby, and she's making a lot of jokes, and maybe the doctor feels like she's really, like, her heart's really not in this. And you got to figure the doctor has no idea that the baby might be half revenant. The doctor has no idea the cluster that is Wynonna's life. So on her end, I feel like a lot of it is just, maybe she really doesn't want to be a mom. I got to let her know that's okay. And that's kind of how I took that interaction, but I know that wasn't everyone's interpretation, but for me personally, I sort of appreciated that she made such a point, to be like, look, you're not just a hospitable ecosystem. You're a woman with a life, and and dreams of your own and goals, and like, you've got options. If if adoption is what you want to do, like, we can do that. And I still really want to know whether or not Wynonna brought her own speculum.
Yes, I do too. No, because you bring up a lot of good points about the doctor, and I know you read my notes on it. And I think it's also, she doesn't know that Wynonna hasn't been dealing with this for 7 months. She's been dealing with this for weeks.
Right.
But the doctor doesn't know this. So she thinks, oh my God, I've got this really here's this really unprepared girl who doesn't know her options, who's barely, like, who's not engaging, who hasn't really embraced this pregnancy, who hasn't really, like, Wynonna is taking baby steps. baby steps as far as this pregnancy. Like, we kind of see her kind of embrace it a little bit last week with just, not being freaked out by the word baby, but she's still not ready to kind of, I think, in some ways, like, acknowledge that it's a real thing, that's, like, this baby exists and everything. I think it's still kind of, she's happy as it's being, like, some sort of abstract idea. In some way, it's like she's not really, I don't know, because I thought that scene in the OB's office was really weird in a way, just because, like, it's important to give options, and I'm totally on board with that. But I just thought the interaction was kind of weird, and her, like, I don't know, like, springing the ultrasound on her and stuff like that. Like, and I get that you have to get somebody to kind of, like, you've got to kind of deal with this. You got to acknowledge that, like, this is a thing that's happening. And I get that, but, like, it was still kind of.
Yeah. And I don't think that it's right or wrong. And like I said, I did read that in notes that scene gave you pause, and you're not alone in that. It was one of those things where I read that in your notes and I was like, man, why wasn't I more bothered by this? Cause like, I really felt like the doctor was like, God, I got to make sure that she knows that she has a way out if she needs one, like, wave your yogurt spoon if you want to put the baby up for adoption. But yeah, like, I guess I wasn't put off by how she handled it. So yeah, but after hearing you kind of talk through it, makes a little bit more sense now to me, like why people were sort of put off by it. The ultrasound thing was not cool. And I don't know if she was, I don't know why she did that. I don't know why she just, like, flipped it around that way. Maybe it was just habit or just what you do in an ultrasound. I've never had one. I don't know. But yeah, that
I haven't either.
Yeah, that makes a little bit more sense to me now.
Like, she doesn't know Wynonna that well, obviously, but I think she's kind of got a bead for the kind of person Wynonna is. So it may be, it was kind of like a tough love situation where it's like, you got to deal with this, and I don't know how else to do this than to actually, like, make you look at this baby.
Yeah.
Like, so that you talk about it and think about it and make a decision for this baby. Like, look, that's a human. Like, that's, or, well, I mean, that's what the doctor knows, but, like, that's a living creature. No, I didn't just call a baby a creature. Don't get on me, guys. It was a joke. No, but I mean, that's you're growing a human, and you have to, like, deal with that and acknowledge that that's a big thing. So it could just be her knowing that Wynonna is kind of, like, because Wynonna's being very flippant and joking and stuff like that. So that could be her way of managing Wynonna. So, like I said, I had weird thoughts just because the ultrasound bit was just like really, I don't know. But Wynonna seemed fine later. She was like talking to the baby and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
which that was actually on one of my favorite moments. I love that Wynonna talks to the baby.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of adore that because she may not be like dealing with this the way that normal people deal with it, but she's still like, I don't know. I like that she talks to the baby, and it's very cute. So
I liked the prenatal vitamins line too. Like when she was like, prenatal
yes,
vitamins, dolls. I feel like a mountain lion. Like that was just a really funny moment. That was maybe, it may have actually been my favorite line of the episode, just for, purely best one-liner. I thought she delivered it wonderfully.
Oh, I had Wynonna at the OB on my moments too. See, look at this being on like top of things, and the baby-shaped pinata. The only thing that you didn't cover in your favorite moments that I had listed was Wynonna picking out Waverly's name, but we kind of talked about that. But it was still kind of like that was one of my favorite little things that like Wynonna picked out Waverly's name.
That was cool.
It just makes me laugh. And again, you want to delve into Waverly's parentage. Her parents wanted to name her Welcome. Like maybe there's more. Like maybe there's that adoption piece to it. But and I also want to talk about Dolls and Wynonna. But since we're already kind of there, let's go back into our favorite quotes. Yeah, I liked that. I liked the prenatal vitamins line. I liked in the OB when she asks in the OB's office when the doctor's like, "Are you getting enough sleep?" And she's like, "Yeah, naps are my bitch." And the taking your vitamins, wash them down each morning with a rum and Coke, minus the rum and the Coke. Like it's just how the doctor's like the doctor isn't taking any crap from her, And Wynonna's just kind of still trying. She's like, I'm gonna try. I loved Nedley's Ed Sheeran concert line.
That was funny.
And Dolls, is he gonna creepy Vegas marry her?
Yeah.
That made me laugh.
He also had that enjoy your righteousness and your protein shakes thing that he said to you, and that was really funny too.
Oh, spoiler alert, if I can talk. Definitely not gonna be a virgin birth.
Yeah.
That made me laugh. There were a lot of good one-liners. But yeah, the prenatal vitamins one was really good. When in doubt, follow the blonde.
Yeah, Waverly had that good one too. I'm the nicest person in purgatory. There was a vote. I got a sash. And I loved that. I loved that one because it's just a funny line on its own. And it also, serves to show the extreme divergence in the paths of the Earp sisters. Wynonna sort of committed herself to the role of the outsider because she didn't have a choice, while Waverly, sort of won the whole town over one smile at a time.
Mm-hmm. But maybe it was easy for her to do because look at the Earp family, and then you've got this sweet and good person in Waverly. So it was maybe she stood out that much more because it was like look at her in spite of her family.
Yeah, low bar.
So yeah, the Earp family set a pretty low bar, but no, Waverly's still like I love that line too. That was on my list as well. So was the tacos are tasty callback, which apparently was an improv from Melanie.
She's a gift.
Yes. So, Buffy.
Yeah.
There were quite a few Buffy homages kind of in this episode. So, let's kind of talk about them all at once.
Okay.
Because there's a lot to hit, and I think we can knock it all out in one section. And I know you want to talk about it.
I do. I don't know if you guys aren't following the 4YE Make Your Peace Twitter account, I actually got yelled at a little bit by Catherine on Friday night because I was calling out this Buffy stuff, and she was like, save it for the podcast.
I don't think I yelled, but I did definitely called you out. So yeah. I'm going to do that every week. You do something, like every time, go save it for the podcast. And there was also that great article that Kevin shared.
Yeah.
Was it a Hollywood Reporter article? Yes. There was a Hollywood Reporter article that was very timely. It came out on Friday afternoon. And it's titled How Sci-Fi's Wynonna Earp is Paying Homage to Buffy. And the author is Kat Jetson. And I believe we shared it on the Make Your Peace Twitter. And Kevin shared it on the Wynonna Earp podcast Twitter. So if you're a Buffy fan who hasn't read that article yet, definitely check it out. It's a great read. I think it was also really timely with this episode and how many parallels there are. So do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
Yeah, sure. Right off the bat, like this whole incantation casting to catch a glimpse of the past and sort of find your power thing, that took me back to Buffy. Not only season 5, where she meets with the first Slayer and finds out death is a gift and all that stuff, but later in season 7, where they have she goes to get more power, and they have the shadow casters, and they're like telling a story that becomes a spell. So that was kind of a twofer. And Bobo was William the Bloody. I mean, like right down to the meek little voice and the perfectly round spectacles. He reminded me of the world's worst poet.
He was really just missing the poetry.
Yeah.
That was a big parallel. And I think that's the one that I yelled at you about.
Yeah.
That I yelled, save it for because it was such a Spike parallel. We've got this, because Spike was originally introduced as kind of this, he's a vampire, he's a bad dude, he's one of the worst of the worst, and you start to, he gets a little bit more human, by the end of season 2, because he helps out Buffy, and, all of that stuff. So there was definitely a big Spike parallel, and of course we get Spike's background, that he's just this mama's boy who's a poet and, hopelessly in love with this girl who won't love him back and who may end up becoming a vengeance demon. Who knows?
Who knows?
So yeah, there was definitely a good parallel with Spike there, and there was that kind of big one at the end. Wynonna dying.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The dolls pointing out the 77 seconds thing kind of reminded me of Spike in season 6, when he tells Buffy she's been dead for 145 days. Or no, sorry, it's 146, I think.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, it would have been 147, but today doesn't count because here you are, basically.
Yeah.
So that's another, Spike two characters kind of almost parallel with Spike. But yeah, Wynonna died for a little bit. What does that mean for the curse?
Yeah, I mean, we know that it was enough to bring Bobo back, which kind of goes to my earlier point that I think he's tied much closer to the Earps than any other Revenant, if that was enough to bring him back and to wake him up. But yeah, I'm also wondering if we're going to hit some Kendra-shaped roadblocks in the curse chronology now that she had a little hiccup and she died for a sec.
But the interesting thing about that, so we've got the Bobo resurrection. We also, Juan Carlo had that line about the Earp sisters will be reunited by sundown. And I saw some speculation on Twitter, and it was when I was scrolling, and so I apologize. I cannot remember who I saw having that conversation. I think it was on Twitter. It might have been in scrolling with Skin Donuts. Either way, I remember seeing it scroll past, and it registered enough to go, oh, that's interesting, but not enough for me to actually retain who it was, so sorry if that was you. But, it could have been, because some people were speculating that it was, almost like a reverse, the most recent person killed, the most recent Revenant killed would have resurrected, and we only saw Bobo. So Juan Carlo said the Earp sisters will be reunited by sundown. But if Waverly's not an Earp, that doesn't mean Waverly.
Right.
What if Bobo is, in fact, not the only person to come back? Maybe he was the only Revenant, but maybe for some reason Willa came back too.
That, or maybe it was his way of alluding to the fact that he knew that Wynonna was going to die for a second. And so he meant that the two of them, reuniting in that they are both dead for a minute.
That is also a good possibility. But I think there are really interesting implications for the curse, because one of the rules to the curse is that when the Earp heir turns 27, we don't have an Earp turning 27 until for another 6 years if Waverly is an Earp.
Right.
Otherwise, we don't have an Earp turning 27 for another 27 and a couple of months.
Right.
Years. So it's interesting what those implications could be for her death, because, with Buffy it was easy. Kendra, Buffy died, Kendra activated, Kendra died, Faith activated.
Right.
So I want to see Wynonna pick up Peacemaker and try to use it and see if anything happens.
Yeah, maybe it doesn't recognize her anymore or something.
And then how do you fix that?
Right.
Because, and then there's also things I don't quite remember about the curse, because it's when the Earth heir turns 27, that's when the Revenants are resurrected, correct? Or at least, right? It's because there's been some conflicting stuff. Like, we've heard when the Earth heir dies, they resurrect, but we also, if they resurrect, they don't get power back until the Earp heir turns 27. Because, like, look at Mama Olive.
Yeah.
She didn't start eating, like, she got the hunger when the Earp heir was active. So I think there's a lot in the mythology to delve into, and I think that's evidenced by how long we've been talking. You know, so I think there's a lot to unpack, and it should be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah.
But I love the Buffy parallels. You know, it's so delightful when two of your favorite shows collide like that.
It is.
What do you think about, like, where the curse stands?
I like the idea that Peacemaker could possibly, like, go dormant for a while. And I like that idea a lot, especially because we just got Bobo back. So it would mean that she would not have a way to kill him for a while, and that would give him time to cause some havoc, and maybe even for them to have a much-needed conversation, sort of reminding him that he was a good man once. So I would be a tiny bit disappointed if her dying for 77 seconds only resulted in one Revenant, that Revenant being Bobo, popping up back to life. I really hope that there are more consequences behind this, and I look forward to seeing what they are, because I think there will be.
Yeah, and even positive or negative, because like I said, okay, so the Earp death, the heir's death, brings them, the heir's death resurrects them, but they go dormant until the next heir turns 27, right?
Yeah.
So if Wynonna's died and then comes back, does that mean the Revenants are dormant until
right.
the next heir comes of age?
Right, so we'll 27 years of peace.
Yeah, that doesn't, we don't really know what that means to be dormant either, because we know they're still going around killing, we know they still have some powers, but, it's one of those, we got a piece of the mythology, but not all of it, and it's frustrating in a way, because it's you want it all at once, and because you just want to know, what's going on, right?
Right.
But I think there's a lot to unpack with the mythology, because it can't go the same way, necessarily. What if Willa does come back, and she ends up being the heir again, but something happened when Peacemaker turned, maybe she didn't go to hell when Wynonna shot her. Maybe that was her going to heaven or whatever nice place you want to picture it being, because Peacemaker turned blue. So maybe Willa would come back in a completely different, she'll be a different person. Kind of we saw that in Xena when Callisto returned.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of returned. I mean, she was still, it was a whole thing. Either way.
I would take some convincing if they brought Willa back. I would need a firm reason as to why.
I kind of would too, to be honest. I don't think it's enough to just say, oh, well, Wynonna died, because it was very clear that Willa's death was different, and I think it was, I don't necessarily want to see her back.
The line...
Not this way.
Yeah, the line of inheritance is moving forward in this family, and Wynonna is pregnant with the next Earp. I mean, the only way that it would make sense would be if the baby had also, they didn't have a pulse on the baby for 77 seconds, and so they thought that was the end of the Earp line. And again, that assumes that Waverly is in no way an Earp. So then they would have to resurrect someone so that the curse could continue, but even then, that's a little, I don't know, I would still really need to be sold on it. That's not the most linear storytelling I've ever heard, so I'm not sure, but
no.
Yeah, but I think that there has to be consequences, yeah.
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about with the nonlinear storyline, kind of that hot mess, that's like season 5 and 6 storyline too. That's when you pull that stuff out to kind of turn around and flip things on its head to make it new and fresh. That's not what you do in season 2, even if you are genuinely worried about getting a season 3.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not what you do. I don't think there was any other random Buffy parallels, not that I can think of.
But if any of you have them, please, get at us on Twitter. And if we missed any Buffy parallels, point them out to us, because we love Buffy and we love interacting with all of you.
And we love that you love our love of Buffy. Okay, I know we didn't really get into... See, I still have so much we want to talk about. I want to talk about. Did you have any last thoughts that we actually, that we absolutely have to talk about? Like, any things that we're missing that's glaring and...
No, dude.
Well, okay, we have a glaring thing, but...
Yeah, no, I think for the most part, all my big topics I covered pretty early on. They were sort of grouped together.
Yeah, mine were.
Yeah, I think I said basically what I needed to say.
Yeah, I mean, I had notes on Rosita and I had notes on Dolls and Wynonna because, like, Rosita, she was really interesting this episode. And I'm kind of wondering if she was acting like that out of self-preservation because Doc said, hey, if I'm not around, you need the Earp sisters to protect you.
Yeah.
Like, they'll protect you like I promised. Or if she genuinely wanted to get to know them and needed Doc's kind of push to be like, it's okay, like, they're fine, they're good people. So I'm interested to kind of learn more about Rosita because she seemed like she was genuinely kind of having fun with them and like she wanted to be in the group, but I don't know. Like, it was kind of a interesting turnaround.
Yeah, I see your point.
Yeah, I mean, I like her. I liked her in this episode. She made Nicole a little bit jealous. And then Dolls and Wynonna. What the heck was with Dolls and Wynonna this episode? Because it feels like we missed an episode, just looking at their interactions. Because they went from, like, Dolls, like, I'm going to be professional and I'm not going to pursue you anymore and blah, 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 to I'm going to have some hella intimate moments with you.
I think like her getting abducted and then kind of dying for a little bit, I think that explains a lot of the intimacy we saw in the last scene. But as far as, like, before that with him taking her to the doctor and everything, I think we can attribute some of that to last week's episode because we did see a thawing with Dolls. We just saw it with Doc. But that, I think that we can sort of take what we saw last episode with Doc and, him saying you're the father because we need you to be the father and saying congratulations and all those things. I think that was his coming around, and now we're sort of seeing that directed at Wynonna where it belongs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was weird because I guess it felt like there was something missing. Like, we needed more than him just being upset at her being dead. Like, I don't know. It just felt like it was a very weird transition to, like, so much intimacy. And I don't know. It was a weird thing. Like, I just thought it was kind of off. And, I mean, not necessarily in a bad way. It was just kind of, like, it really threw me. That scene threw me more than a lot of the scenes did, to be honest. Because it was just like, whoa, like, that's really intimate. Like, it felt like there was a scene missing, or, like, I don't know. But I wanted to get that out. Because it was definitely one of my questions. It threw me.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from.
Okay, I'm looking at my notes to see if there's anything glaring that I absolutely have to mention. Random thought. So, Nicole gets this new uniform, and we've barely seen her in it. It's like she gets a new uniform, then all of a sudden we see her in civilian clothes.
Yeah, she really fought for that. And, like, this episode, she was dressed up like a pink lady. Like, what gives?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not mad about it.
No, it was a cute jacket.
And, no, I just thought that was funny. But if you don't have anything else on your list, and I don't have anything else on my list, shall we wrap up?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for listening. We know this is going to be a little bit of a long one, and I'm only kind of sorry about rambling so much, but there was a lot to unpack in this episode. So if there's anything that you think we missed or anything that you guys want to talk more about, make sure you let us know. You can find me on Twitter at @Meushaw, and that's at CMEUSHAW, where I'll be live tweeting every Friday night, and I'll also post my recaps for each episode. I'll retweet those. Make sure you check those out. Laura, where can they find you?
You guys can find me at RS Mayfair on Twitter. And every Friday night, I live tweet the episode from our official Twitter handle, 4YE_MYP podcast.
And you really want to make sure you're following her. I'm going to say it every week, but she's hilarious and fabulous to follow when you're live tweeting. So really on top of things. So make sure, just give us some feedback. Like I said, I know this was a long one. So if you'd rather us not do this to you anymore, let us know. And let us know your theories. Because, like I said, this was a lot. So we want to hear them. We want to continue having these conversations because it was a really heavy ep. So hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next week.